Hi guys, it's ASBYT and this is the Google Pixel 4a, and I've been using it on and off for about a week or so. I know what you're thinking, it already feels like this phone's been out for ages now because it was leaked literally about half a year ago. But it's finally here, almost. So let's take a deep dive look at all the features and see exactly what you get for £349 UK, similar in US dollars. So the A series of phones are Google's budget range. They still include many of the features of the flagship Pixel phones, like camera, more on that later, but at a much cheaper price. It's the reason why the 3A and 3A XL were so popular last year, and on the face of things, this is very similar again, with a few key differences. Unlike last year, however, it seems like there's going to be no 4A XL, just the standard 4A, which leads me to believe that Google are cooking something under the hood. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. The 4A is very similar in design language to the Pixel 4, which is almost double the price. The same matte back finish as a couple of the colours, same contrasting home button, same speaker grills, same square rear camera setup, and it's got a similar size and weight to it also. In fact, the only real ways you could really tell that these are different phones is the smaller camera setup with only one lens as opposed to two, a headphone jack, I'm sure a few ears picked up there, the front display which now runs bezel to bezel on all four sides obstructed by only the punch hole camera cutout, which I'm sure many people would actually prefer to its more expensive sibling, and the fingerprint scanner mounted on the rear. That fingerprint scanner is fast and reliable, and although some would argue that it looks a bit dated now, I've never really had a problem with them mounted on the rear, and actually often they are faster and more reliable than in-display ones. Now the lack of that top bezel does mean that there is no secure Face ID because there's no room for the solid motion sense radar, which was kind of a big deal on the Pixel 4. I personally think that Google could have at least added some form of 2D facial recognition like the majority of other Android phones on the market, but hey ho, I still think this could really fly off the shelves, and I think so for three main reasons. If I were to ask you what are the main differences between flagship phones and budget or mid-range phones over the last few years, presumably a lot of you would say camera, number one, display, and build quality. So let's start with camera. We have basically the same primary sensor as the flagship Pixel 4, so it's a 12.2 megapixel with f1.7 aperture, OIS and EIS, and autofocus with dual pixel phase detection. And as expected with anything Google phone camera related, it's pretty excellent. Sharp, decent dynamic range, and it focuses at lightning speeds, meaning portrait shots on the fly are crazy good. On top of that, you get the OG of low light shooting software, Night Sight, which is still brilliant. We also have basically the same primary front camera as on the Pixel 4, an 8 megapixel sensor with f2.0 aperture, and again, objectively, you can get some of the best selfies in the game, if that's your sort of thing. Don't know what that face is. That's never going to look good on camera. Now, video on the other hand is not industry leading on the 4A, but then weirdly, it never really has been on any of the Pixel phones. Surprising considering how good their how good their photos are. 4K at 30 frames a second max on the rear and 1080 at 30 frames a second on the front, so certainly usable for sure. Now onto the display. Have they cut corners here? Well, only partially. You see we have a premium 5.81 inch Full HD Plus OLED display, so yes, it's not QHD or 4K, but it has a high 443 pixels per inch count, so it looks really nice and sharp with high contrast ratio, so inky blacks, and on a display this size, do you really need Quad HD or 4K? I'm not so sure. So really the only corners they've cut display-wise is refresh rate. We've got a 60Hz refresh rate as opposed to the 90, 120, 144, etc. on the high-end flagship phones that we see in the last year or two. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a high refresh rate display for that, excuse the cliche, buttery smoothness. But at a phone of £350, if that's the only drawback display-wise, I'm kind of probably okay with that. So that's camera, display, now build quality, which again, they've only partially made compromises on. It looks like the flagship Pixel 4, like I said, and to be honest, it kind of feels similar too. Although it is slightly lighter and it is made of polycarbonate plastic with Gorilla Glass 3 cover glass. But the buttons are firm, clicky and robust, and it's all wrapped up in a nice small package.
That's what she said.
So nice small package, sure, but because of its small size, battery capacity will undoubtedly suffer at 3,140 mAh. That may not seem huge by today's flagship standards, but remember the 3A and 3A XL had really great battery life in terms of the software optimization, so we'll wait and see on that one. And before we look at some of the potential drawbacks, we've got two more ticks in my books. Stereo speakers, number one, which are really, really impressive for a phone that costs, again, £350. And on top of that, the phone is of course made by Google, which means you get the latest and greatest software as soon as it drops. So you've heard a lot of good things about this phone. But how do they make this phone at £349 then? We've touched on a couple, but what major corners have they cut? Well, there's the obvious things like only one camera lens, so we don't get an ultra wide angle lens, we don't get a telephoto lens, no optical zoom, there's also no IP rating, there's no wireless charging, there's no expandable storage, and there's no high-end chipset. Some or all of those may be a general concern for you, but there's one that I think gets slightly overplayed, and that's the importance of having the very highest mobile chipset. That is, of course, for everyday tasks if you are an average consumer. Yes, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 is incredible, don't get me wrong, but so is the 855 from last year and the 845 from the year before, and I've even been really impressed with Qualcomm's mid-range chipset series, the 700 series. This is running with the Snapdragon 730, which was released back in April last year, so not super high-end, but combined with the 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage for social media, browsing the internet and light gaming, this is going to be absolutely great for the average consumer. Is this going to be the perfect phone for you tech heads out there who want the most powerful chipset available, the all singing, all dancing, full bells and whistles phone, the best there is? Well, no, it's not, quite frankly, but then I doubt you guys would be looking at a phone that costs £349. Could they have gone with the Snapdragon 765G that we've seen in the likes of the OnePlus Nord here? Yes, possibly. That would of course given them the likes of a 5G dedicated modem, the X52, of course meaning we've got no 5G with this. But maybe because the 4A was meant to come out quite a long time ago, we know this from the leaks, and because it's been delayed so much, maybe the 765G simply wasn't available when the phone was being planned. And that brings me back round to the point of why was it so delayed in the first place, and where's the 4A XL? And this is of course just my opinion, I could be completely wrong, but I got the feeling that with the 4A, they're lining it up to actually join almost as part of the launch of the Pixel 5. Because you can pre-order this phone from the 10th of September, but it only actually goes on sale on the 1st of October, which is incredibly late based on the 3A and 3A XL from last year, and it runs into the launch time of the potential Pixel 5. Are Google looking to have a 5, a 5XL, and the 4A as the budget option, all in kind of a bit of a trio? Yes, it would make more sense to call it the 5A, but this is Google we're talking about. Who knows, right? Overall, unless you're looking for the very best chipset available, or 5G, or a high refresh rate display, then this little phone right here is a bit of a pocket dynamite. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you are new to the channel and love everything tech, news, unboxings, reviews. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. Says ASBYT. Peace out.